Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today. My name is Deanna Bell, and I represent Bridge Abroad Media, an agency specializing in international student recruitment through social media and influencer marketing. Today, I'd like to introduce a recruitment strategy designed to help universities connect with prospective international students in a way that feels more authentic, engaging, and trustworthy. In today's world, students rarely rely on university websites or brochures alone when deciding where they want to study. Instead, they search social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Xiaohongshu and see what campus life actually looks like through experiences of current students. They typically want more than admissions requirements and program information. They want to know what it's like to live on campus, to adjust to a new culture, build new friendships, and become part of a university community. Our strategy is designed to answer those questions by combining official university communications with real storytelling from students and trusted education creators. The result is a recruitment approach that builds trust earlier in the decision making process while supporting the university's existing admissions effort. Before discussing the campaign itself, I'd like to briefly introduce our agency. Bridge Abroad Media focuses on helping universities communicate with prospective students through authentic digital storytelling. Our approach is built around three areas shown on the slide. The first is digital storytelling. Rather than relying solely on promotional ads, we help universities tell stories that allow prospective students to imagine themselves becoming part of the campus community. These real or authentic experiences create stronger emotional connections because students relate to people more than institutions. The second strategy, the second area is strategy. Every communication recommendation should be guided by audience behavior and measurable objectives. We identify where prospective students are already spending their time online, what information they're searching for, and how content can guide them through that recruitment journey. And lastly, global recruitment. Reaching international students requires more than translating information into another language. It also means understanding different cultures, different expectations, and the concerns that students portray so that communication feels relevant and accessible. Together, these three areas allow us to connect universities with the world through authentic storytelling, strategic content, and meaningful influencer partnerships. Now, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our client. The university already has several strengths that make it an attractive destination for international students. Those strengths include academic excellence and innovation, a diverse and student centered community, and a commitment to building global connections and developing future leaders. These are all very valuable messages. However, prospective students often want to see what those statements actually translate to in everyday life. So instead of simply reading that a university has a welcoming community, they want to watch current students interact on campus. They want to participate in the organizations or watch other students participate in organizations. They want to see people attending events and sharing personal experiences while they're on and off campus. Instead of hearing about academic excellence through traditional promotional language. They want to see the actual classrooms, what those feel like, different projects, and they want to hear real students talking about their learning experiences. So, this campaign takes the institutional strengths and transforms them into stories that prospective students can connect with on a personal level. Now, let's go ahead and address what challenge we are facing with this communication gap. So, traditional universities typically have recruitment materials that include brochures, websites, advertisements, formal communications, college fairs, things like that. And these do provide important information. They do a good job of explaining admissions requirements, tuition, scholarships, perhaps academic programs, university policies, but students don't really find that interesting. Instead, they have other types of questions that they want to ask, like what is the dorm life like? Will I make friends? What is campus culture like day to day? How can I prepare before I arrive? And these are the real experiences they're going to have. Therefore, it's important to them to feel like these questions can be answered. A brochure can explain what a residence hall offers, but it can't show what moving into that room feels like. And the website can describe the student organizations, but it can't really recreate the environment of attending an event for the first time, the excitement of making friends in a new country, things like that. And this is why we view this as a communication gap rather than an information gap. The information already exists. What's missing is the authentic storytelling that helps prospective students picture themselves becoming part of the university community. Therefore, because of this, we want to go ahead and close that communication gap to ensure that there's more beyond just brochures and basic information. We recommend building a recruitment strategy around three complementary types of voices. The first is going to be current students. Current students bring that real life experience, those stories, because they've lived that experience. They can share information about campus life, dorm tours, classroom experiences, different student organizations, local food and culture, activities, local tourism, what it's like to adjust to studying in China. And then our second group is going to be trusted creators. So these include people like study abroad creators, education influencers, and their audiences are already interested in international education. Their content could focus on preparing to study in China or scholarship communities, but these trusted creators inspire confidence and hopefully would help drive enrollment. Finally, we have the university messaging. Official university messaging does remain the foundation of the campaign because admissions requirements, scholarships, deadlines, visa guidance, and policies should always come from an official source. And therefore, it is important to have the actual university messaging itself to make sure that there is a consistent voice of true and accurate information at any time. Using these three different types of voices together, we hope to build credibility, authenticity, and provide reach and visibility for the university. And this would hopefully encourage prospective students to move forward in the admissions process to apply at this university. Now, we've gone ahead and established a strategy. Let's look at why influencer marketing is an effective tool for international recruitment. The first stage when it comes to how influencer marketing works is attention. Creators capture interest where students spend time. And students are now consistently on digital platforms, like I said earlier, Instagram, TikTok, Xiaohongshu, which is a specific Chinese app that is used socially. And it kind of translates to Little Red Book. And people use it for everything from videos to art to local tourist spots to reservations to recommendations. And so knowing where students spend their time in the digital world is important. And these creators can capture the interest where those students are actually spending their time. Next, we have trust. So students do tend to place greater confidence in people that they perceive as genuine and relatable. So seeing another international student share honest experiences will often feel more credible than actually reading a polished promotional brochure or materials. The students know that universities are trying to recruit them, and therefore they're going to say lots of good things on the actual brochures, websites, things like that. But hearing it from a peer or someone who is a relatable voice has much higher of an impact because those people may or may not have any investment into giving an honest opinion, basically, for the program. Now, once we have their attention and once we have established trust through relatable voices and peers, then we start to lead to engagement. And instead of simply just viewing the content, they can now begin to ask questions. They can share videos, they can comment on posts, they can save information for later. And those interactions indicate that curiosity is becoming genuine interest. So the more that people engage, the more they save, the more that they comment, ask questions, connect with those trusted peers, the better it is going to be in the future when they are thinking of enrolling or where they would like to enroll, which leads us to enrollment interest. So, when students begin watching a creator's content, they are more likely to become interested, follow that person, do research, and this would lead to more inquiries and applications. So, going to the website, requesting additional information, sending emails inquiring about information to recruiters, and similar types of actions. So, the goal isn't to replace the traditional recruitment, but to strengthen it by using authentic communication to move students from initial awareness to informed decision making. So, given all of these things, it's important to know what kinds of creator partnerships we should be focusing on because we have to have the right social media influencer in order to be able to have the correct messaging that you want to be sent to your audience. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first group, as you can see here in the middle, student ambassadors. So these are current international students who are already living the experience that prospective students want to understand. Their content could include things like daily campus life, classroom experiences, real student organizations at the university, behind the scenes moment outside of the classroom, perhaps, dorm life, and the challenges and successes of adapting to life in China. And because they're sharing their own experiences, their content does feel authentic rather than promotional. The second group is study abroad creators. These creators should already have audiences interested in international education. Instead of focusing primarily on just campus life, they can create content that answers practical questions about studying in China. These include scholarship opportunities, maybe things that they applied for, the ways that they searched for scholarship, tips on being able to find money to be able to travel. This could include admissions requirements, what they had to do, maybe updated information where they can get that information, even plugging in another creator who specializes in this. They could talk about the application timelines, visa preparation. That's very important, especially if you're going to be traveling overseas to China. The visa requirements can be very strict for students. And finally, what students should expect before they arrive. So these study abroad creators are really good for kind of setting up the research aspect for audiences and students who might be interested. Now, the last group we have are regional and cultural creators. These creators understand the language, culture, and communication preferences of specific target audiences. Their content might include language learning, cultural insights, or community support that helps these students feel more comfortable with the idea of studying abroad. So instead of it being more of a technical, educational side, it's more of the what's outside of the classroom. What can you experience? What's the culture like? Helping language learning for those people who are nervous about being in an area where primarily most of the people don't speak whatever their language is. It's going to be mostly Chinese. So having these regional and cultural creators can help with the anxiety or the fear that international students might have coming over to China. So, together, these three creator groups provide authenticity. They provide a practical guide and even updated and cultural relevance with modern day expectations. And this allows the university to communicate with the students at multiple stages of their decision making process, which is really important because sometimes the students are younger, sometimes they're right about to graduate. It's important to have different levels of communication on multiple different stages at a time to encourage more and more students to apply. All right, on the screen here, you can see that here are some examples of sample campaigns that could be established in creating content where students are already searching online. So we have one example, A Day in My Life, International Student in China. And rather than focusing only on academics, this type of content follows a current student through a normal day. So she might see classes, meals, cafeteria food options, studying, campus activities they participate in, sports games, conversations with friends, games that they play, different things like that. The content itself is pretty simple, but that's what makes it effective because it answers the question, what would my life actually look like if I studied there? So having those day in the life kinds of content creators would be excellent for bridging that particular question or communication that students wonder about. Another example is a dorm tour, which you can see here um, on the left side with Liu Chen. And this is an example of an influencer who is going to be showing off housing or, the student housing themselves, especially since the university has recently redone new student dorms. This would be an excellent way to be able to promote the new dorms for prospective students who are coming. Showing what the rooms look like, how they're organized, what shared spaces are available, and what daily life in the dorms is like can reduce uncertainty before students even arrive. And so this is an excellent way because in a lot of traditional Chinese universities, they have anywhere from 8 students or more in one dorm room. And so if someone's not comfortable living with other people, then it's important for them to know, oh, hey, this fits me, this doesn't fit me, because they may have to deal with having 7 roommates. Finally, a third example, as you can see over on the right-hand side, is why I chose this university. We have kind of a Western influencer with the 2 previous Chinese students, and this campaign gives students the opportunity to explain why they chose the university or what they expected before arriving. They can talk about their experiences compared with expectations, reality versus anxiety. And those personal stories often resonate far more than traditional promotional messaging because they're based on real experiences rather than just marketing languages. And although these different campaigns serve different purposes, they share one goal, which is to help students answer real questions while building trust through authentic storytelling. Now, one of the great strengths of this campaign is that it supports students throughout the entire decision making journey rather than focusing on only one stage. So, we start with discovery. And at this stage, a student may come across a short video, they may see a social media post, a recommendation from a creator. Even if they're not actively searching for the university, it's still there to kind of like introduce the university, spark interest, things like that. And then once you have that interest, they start to look for more information. So they start to kind of explore a little bit more. They may search for dorm tours. They may try to find student testimonials, campus life videos. They might look into admissions guidance. These are all things that spark interest. And this is where the authentic creator content helps answer those questions because they may not be able to find the official marketing materials that they're looking for. And then once they've kind of explored a little bit, they've shown interest, then they can start to kind of get to the application stage. And at this point, the creator content reinforces but does not replace the university's official communications by directing students toward verified admissions information, application requirements, and important deadlines. So, this application process can really be kind of fast tracked with a little bit more social media guidelines. And then that can also lead to enrollment. And content during this stage shifts kind of towards more practical guidance, such as arrival information, airport pickup, orientation activities, preparing for life in China, these types of things. And then eventually they would become an advocate themselves. So these students who were originally just showing a little bit of interest can now themselves become ambassadors, become advocates, and help other students apply for their own kind of journey through this process. All right. Now, of course, if this is going to be a successful recruitment campaign, we should be measuring more than just enrollment numbers alone. Enrollment is important, but it's also the final outcome of a much longer communication process. If we only evaluate the campaign after students enroll, we miss valuable opportunities to understand what's working through the recruitment journey. And for that reason, we recommend evaluating success across four categories. The first is awareness, which includes measures such as the social media reach, video views, overall brand recognition, and these metrics will tell us whether more prospective students are discovering the university and whether this is actually reaching the audience that it needs to reach. Next, we have engagement, and this is going to include people finding the content and engaging, like we said before. This would be making comments, asking questions, sharing with friends, family, other people around them, time spent watching the videos, how many times they've liked the videos, things like that. And these interactions demonstrate that students are actively engaged with the university content rather than simply just scrolling past it. The third category is interest, in which case we would look at metrics such as how many times people visit the website. The QR code stands, which is really, really big in China. They use QR codes for everything. And so it would be very common for them to have a QR code which provides information to students easily instead of having to search through the website. Um, and finally, admissions inquiries. And these can show whether the actual social media campaign is working by encouraging prospective students to seek additional information through the official university channels and not just through social media. And then our last measure is conversion. And by evaluating the performance across all four of these categories, it's not just focusing on one outcome, but gaining a clear understanding of how prospective students move from discovering the university to ultimately becoming enrolled students. All right, now let's talk about a real timeline. So, this particular university has a very specific timeline that it works by, and I can only say that this is how this university works. I can't say that every single Chinese university works this way, but this would be a very realistic timeline based on the experiences of students and myself as a professor, talking about what this campaign would look like. So, in the spring, and which is from basically March to April, we would start to build kind of more of the awareness and decision stage. This is where we launch the creator partnerships. We produce those Why I Chose the University videos. We post campus life content. We have student testimonials. And then in the early summer, which is around May to June, we start with the support for the application. Admissions and Q&A, scholarship, visa preparation, application walkthroughs, checklists, different things like that. And then in late summer, so around late June, July ish, mostly late July, we would have the arrival preparation. So this is where we give dorm tours. This is where we provide packing tips, airport arrival guidance, meeting your new classmates, perhaps orientation. And then the fall semester officially starts in August and September. And this is where we focus on student success and advocacy. We have welcome week content. We can produce first week experiences, campus event highlights, daily vlogs. This is where we encourage students to become future ambassadors. And one of the distinct things about the university um, that we're going to be working with our client is that they have kind of this welcoming performance for all students who are freshmen at the beginning of the semester. And this is where students can show off talents. They can kind of advertise themselves as someone at the university. And it's also a really great experience for students to get to know their own roommates, to get to know other students, especially if they're international students. This could be a really good exposure opportunity for them to be able to create lots of good content around kind of like the welcoming week and first week experiences with meeting new people. All right, now launching a successful campaign is only the beginning of a strong client relationship. So at Bridge Abroad Media, we do believe that effective account management is built on continuous collaboration rather than one time campaign delivery. As you can see, we have a few different recommendations and ways that we would be able to try to become a true strategic partner long term and continue with account management in this regard. So, the first is to have regular strategy meetings. And these meetings would allow us to review campaign performance, to discuss the recruitment priorities, and ensure that communication objectives continue to align with the university's goals. And so this would kind of be, review performance, regular meetings, ensure that communication is always on point and that there is as little miscommunication as possible. Next, we would have, of course, open communication. International recruitment is constantly evolving, and there are always changes to admission policies, student needs, global trends, and politics, especially, play a big part when it comes to um, the politics of Western and Eastern governments. So it's very important to make sure that open communication is staying that way. We need to stay responsive, we need to be collaborative, we need to make sure that if anything happens, we can respond quickly and effectively. The third is data driven insights. So, throughout the campaign, we would monitor which platforms, creators, and content types generate the strongest results. For example, if student created dorm tours consistently generate more engagement and admissions inquiries than traditional promotional videos, we can adjust for future content to build on that success and analyze the results to identify more opportunities in the future. Perhaps another platform, social media platforms becoming more important than others, and digital media is constantly changing. Finally, we can focus on continuous improvement um, by using the performance data and audience feedback to refine our strategy. And that ensures that we remain relevant and that the student expectations and digital communications, as they evolve, we also continue to evolve and to remain up to date and relevant and modern with what the audiences that we're trying to reach are interacting with and living with day to day. Now, as technology and as we have advancements with artificial intelligence, we're going to be faced with using it more or choosing not to use it more. And the solution is use it modestly. With everything, the golden rule, the golden median, right? It's important to put everything into balance. So, artificial intelligence does support as a role, like throughout the development of the campaign. And so, as you can see, some of the advantages, AI is useful in helping to brainstorm campaign ideas. We can use AI to help organize information, especially if we have large chunks of information. If we have data, a lot of times using AI to analyze data can help us put it into easier to read numbers and things that can be looked at quickly. We can use AI to help draft and refine content as we go along. We can create visual concepts. So sometimes there's not a picture, an image, or a visual for what we are thinking in our heads. And we can use AI within strict parameters to be able to create those visual concepts that we see in our heads but may not actually exist in real life. We can use it to improve efficiency because one of the best things about AI is that it's really good at making those repeated actions, those repeated things we have to do efficient by standardizing them or by creating a program that allows it to analyze quickly and efficiently. However, as said, we shouldn't just jump in with AI all the time and use it for everything. AI, while really good, cannot replace human judgment. It lacks cultural context and nuance. Um, it doesn't have the cultural awareness and lived experience necessary for international recruitment. And while it does successfully communicate with students, sometimes it's important that it has a good understanding of language, culture, personal experience, which only humans can have. It also requires fact checking and verification. As many know, AI is great, but oftentimes, if it doesn't have the answer, it may put random information in. And therefore, it is important to always fact check and verify that the information we have is correct and that it's not just creating it out of thin air because it wants to give an answer. And finally, as said before, it cannot create authentic student experiences. So even if we were to create an AI generated content video like we had previously in the slide, where we talked about like different examples of student campaigns here, like this looks good, but it's very obviously AI, and people don't connect with AI. And so it's important to make sure that we're not trying to create these inauthentic experiences using AI. We need to make sure we're using real humans with real lived experiences, so that way the audiences can actually connect to the content and the people. To conclude, today's students expect more from university recruitment than brochures, websites, and promotional materials alone. They want authentic experiences that help them understand what it will actually feel like to study, live, and succeed at a university before making one of the biggest decisions of their lives. Thank you for your time and consideration. On behalf of Bridge Abroad Media, we appreciate the opportunity to present this proposal, and we look forward to helping your university build lasting connections with future international students. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.